Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be upcycling a pair of pants by adding multiple layers, cargo pockets, and adding zip-off bottoms so you can wear them as joggers or capris. All these upgrades are super easy, so if you're new to sewing, you should have no problem following the easy step-by-step tutorial. With all that being said, let's get started. Getting started with supplies, you'll need 2 pairs of pants, and you can use any style of pants for this project. But I do recommend finding pants that are similar in size and style. Getting started, place 1 pair off to the side and measure down about 2 inches on the inseam from the center seam. This is where we're going to make our cut. To be precise, place the first pant leg on the second pant leg and make your second cut. We don't need the top section, so for the moment we can place it off to the side. Now we can grab the second pair of pants and make the exact cut. Line up both pant legs on the second pair of pants and make your cuts. Then place the top section off to the side. The next thing we're going to do is split the pant legs up into sections, and it really comes down to how many sections you want to make. I'll be splitting mine up into 3 parts, so I'm going to be making 2 cuts on each pant leg, but feel free to make more cuts if you would like more sections. You also don't need to split them up into equal parts. For the next step, we don't need the bottom section, so we can place them off to the side. Before we start sewing, if you're just doing the sections on your pants, you can actually make 2 pairs of pants, and essentially all you have to do is just swap the sections for each pair of pants. Then you continue to go back and forth all the way down the pant leg, and you get 2 pairs of pants at the end. So in the end, there's no waste. When it comes to attaching the pant legs back on, there's a few different ways you can do it. I'm actually going to slide the pant legs right in the opening with right sides to wrong sides, and doing it this way, it's going to expose that raw edge at the end. But not everyone likes that look, so there's a second way you can actually do this. If you're looking for a clean finish, you're going to want to flip the pants inside out, place the leg panel in the opening with right sides together, lining up the side seams, and make your stitch. Then you'll repeat that all the way down the pant leg. This will give you a clean finish in the end with no exposed edges. This is not the way I'm going to be doing it in the video. I just wanted to show you another option if you don't like that raw edge look. In whatever way you choose to make it, you can still add the cargo pockets and the zip-off bottoms. But anyways, we're going to focus on 1 pair of pants, so we're going to place the second pair off to the side. Now I'm going to take the pant leg, place it on the inside the opening with right side to wrong side. And the pant leg is entering the opening about 1 inch. And you can scale that back to about a ½ inch if you don't want to lose length. Once you have it lined up, place a few pins. For this stitch, you're not going to be able to see the underside, so you're really just going to be going off the top. So a good way to keep on track is to sketch out your stitch path with a pencil or chalk. And this is not mandatory, it just makes it a little bit easier for an accurate stitch. And the last thing I want to go over, if you're using 2 different styles of pants, the circumference might not line up, so what you want to do is de-thread the side seam, along with about 2 inches of side seam on the top section, lay the pant section out flat, and from there you can make adjustments so both sides line up. More than likely, you're going to have to sew it on flat and then re-sew the side seams in future steps. This is why it's a little bit easier to work with pants that are the same size, but it can still be done either way, it just takes a little bit more time. But anyways, now that we have both sides lined up and pinned down, we're going to add our stitch. And I'm placing my stitch about a ½ inch away from that raw edge. But you can make adjustments to that. The further you go up, the more that edge will be exposed, giving you an extra tattered look. From here, we're going to grab the second section of pants, and I'm going to be going back and forth with the 2 different colors. Just like with the first one, I'm going to place it on the inside of the opening with right sides to wrong sides. I'm also going to be sliding it in about 1 inch to match the first section. Feel free to make adjustments if you did in the previous step. Then go ahead and pin each side down and add your stitch. And a trick to sewing these, you may want to remove the base on your sewing machine to turn it into a cylinder bed. Now that we have 2 sections on, you can continue with the last section if you don't want to add the cargo pockets. But we're going to be adding cargo pockets on the side, and this is way easier to do when there's less leg space. So we can place the pants off to the side and grab the panels that we're going to go on the second pair of pants. I'll be utilizing these panels to make the cargo pockets. But if you are making the second pair of pants, then you can use any style of fabric to make the pockets. The first thing I'm going to do is cut out the front section of the pocket. And you can cut this to any size you would like. But keep in mind you're going to need 2 front sections for each pocket. And I'm just going to be making 1 pocket at a time. Now I'm going to grab a second section, cut down the side seam, and open it up. What I'm going to do is cut this panel up into strips so we can create side panels. Since the main panel is on the bigger side, one of these strips will not fit all the way around the outside edge, and that's why I cut 3 strips, so I can cut that third strip in half and attach it to the other 2 to make it long enough. Once you have the third strip cut in half, place the right sides together, lining up the side edges, and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, flip the right sides out and add a top stitch. And the top stitch is optional. Now we can grab the front panels, and there's 2 different ways you can do this. You can place the right sides together around the side and bottom edges, This will give you clean edges on your pocket after sewing, but we're going to stick with the tattered edge look and place the wrong sides together. It is a little bit different way of doing it, but it's going to give it a nice look in the end. As you can see, the strips I cut are way too long. Don't worry about that. If yours are too long, we're going to take care of these in later steps. When it comes to sewing, we're going to do it in sections. We're going to sew the side all the way through, the bottom all the way through, and the second side all the way through. And by doing it this way, it's going to give us nice clean corners. And I'm also sewing at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we can lay both pockets out flat with right sides facing up and trim the top strips flush with the top edge. From here, we're going to line up the pockets with wrong sides together. And you want to make sure you perfectly line up the side seams along that top edge. And the reason I'm using the 2 layers for one pocket is because I want it to be thicker, bulkier, and more quality. If you want a slimmer pocket, you don't need to use the 2 layers. You can stick to 1 layer. But after everything's lined up, we're going to stitch that top edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, this stitch is going to allow that top edge to be raw. If you don't want the top edge to be raw, you can place the right sides together, add your stitch, and then flip the wrong sides together. This next step is optional. Now that we have the pocket complete, we're going to create the flap. To create the flap, I'm going to be using the bottom section of the pants that has the hem. I'm going to spin it to the side seam, make a cut, and open it up so I have more fabric to work with. When it comes to the flap, you actually want it to be a little bit wider than the pocket, and you can make the height any size you would like. So the easiest way to do this is cut the panel wider than the width of your pocket, fold the panel to the height you'd prefer, and cut off the excess fabric. I'm also going to be cutting the fold to create a raw edge at the top. Now I have 2 layers and I'm going to sew the sides and the bottom edge. I'm going to leave the top edge unstitched because I'll be placing a stitch there when we attach it to the pants. And it's really that simple. So if you're adding 2 pockets, you'll need 2 flaps and then also 2 pocket sections. And like I said, these pockets can be made to any size. But anyways, moving on, we're going to grab the pants and install one of the pockets. And I'll be placing my pockets directly in the middle of the side seam. Feel free to move them around for a different look. I'm also going to be lining the pocket up with the top edge of the top section. This is an easy way to keep the pockets lined up and looking symmetrical. When it comes to attaching the sides, you want to fold it in half so the bottom lines up with the top of the pocket. You don't really want the sides sticking out past the width of the pocket. Just like in previous steps, we're going to have the raw edges sewing, so we're placing the wrong side to the right side of the fabric. If you don't want the raw edges sewn, fold the side under so the right sides are together. Just like when we made the pocket, we're going to sew through each of the sides. So we're going to sew through the sides and the bottom. And it's easier to do it this way because you can go through the top to get to the pocket or the bottom to get to the pocket. And that's the thing about adding pockets, they're very hard to get to because the pant leg is closed off. But sewing it this way makes it a little bit easier. And once you have both pockets pinned on, take it to your sewing machine and stitch the outside edge. And again, I'm sewing the edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Definitely take your time because you don't want to accidentally sew the 2 pant leg layers together. And as you can see, we have the raw edges on the bottom side of the pocket and also on the top side of the pocket. And these pockets are on the bigger side. If you don't like that look, you can always scale them down. Next, we're going to grab the flat panel and add it directly above the pocket. And again, for this step, I like to use the side seam as a reference point so I align the flap correctly. And I'll be placing my flap about 1 inch above the pocket. You can make adjustments to this if you're using a smaller flap. Once you have both flaps pinned down, take it to your sewing machine and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, if you don't like the alignment, you can always de-thread and reposition it. Next, we're going to be adding snap buttons, and I'm going to be using magnetic snap buttons. And these are super easy to install. We'll be installing 1 on each side of the flap. If you don't like that look, you can always add just 1 in the center. Using a hole punch, I'm going to punch a hole just in the flap. When it comes to the magnetic snaps for the flap side, I like to use the thinner side of the snap. This makes the flap a little bit lighter and it's easier to open. So feed the thin side through the opening from the bottom side of the flap. Place the cap on the opposite side, and to install them, we're going to be using a standard hammer die. It's really easy to do. Line up the base on the underside of the flap and hammer it down from the top. And you don't need a ton of force with the hammer or else you're going to dent that top cap. Then go ahead and repeat this process for the opposite side of the flap. Line the flap up with the pocket and you're going to mark directly where that snap hits the bottom side of the pocket. This is where we're going to be placing the second half of the snap, and I like to do it this way so that they're perfectly lined up. Punch your holes and place the bottom section of the snap into the opening from the top side. And just like with the top section, we're going to use the hammer die to hammer it into position. Then go ahead and repeat this process for the second pocket. And you can still use the same technique if you're using different styles of snaps. I always like to start with the flap, see where it falls, and then place the second half of the snap. Moving on to the next step, we're going to grab the last section of pants, and this is going to be the hemmed section. You can place these on just like we did in the previous steps and be done with the project, but we're going to take it one more step further and turn these into convertible pants. To do this, we're going to be adding zippers at the bottom so that way we can detach the bottoms and either wear them as capris or regular pants. So we can place the pants off to the side and grab 2 zippers that are the same length as the opening on the sections. The top opening is 21 inches, so I grabbed 20-inch zippers. It is a little bit small, but it's still gonna work. Line up the zipper in the top opening with the wrong side of the pants to the right side of the zipper. Doing it this way will expose the raw edge. If you don't want that look, you're going to want to place the right sides together. Place a ton of pins so it stays lined up and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. For the best results, I do recommend using a zipper presser foot. And as you can see, my zipper is a little bit short, but it's totally fine. If yours turns out that way, it's still gonna work. Now we can grab the pants and place the bottom sections in the openings just like we did in the previous steps. I don't want the zipper exposed, so I'm gonna push it in a little bit deeper than 1 inch. And once you have it lined up, take it to your sewing machine and add your stitch. Now we have a convertible pair of pants that you can remove the bottom section and wear them as capris. That previous stitch is a little bit tricky because you can't see the zipper as you're sewing, so if you need to de-thread and restitch, you can totally do that. So at this point, the pants can be complete, but we're going to be doing one more modification. For this modification, you'll need any size elastic because we're going to be turning the bottoms into joggers. And if you're wondering, I'm using 1.5 inch width elastic. And we'll be adding it at the bottom to bring that opening together. It's another easy step. All you have to do is roll the bottom edge inward so it's larger than the width elastic you're using. I'm using 1.5 inch width elastic, so I rolled it in 2 inches. Then we're going to sew all the way around the top edge of the hem, leaving about a 4 inch gap so we can put the elastic in after stitching. And we'll be adding one more stitch along the bottom edge, a 1/4 inch away from the edge, and for this stitch we're going to go all the way around. These stitches can get pretty bulky, so I do recommend using a heavy weight needle. The bigger you make the opening, the easier it's going to be to install the elastic. Next, you're going to cut 2 strips of elastic, and you want these to be on the longer side. It makes it a lot easier when you're feeding them through because you can always trim them down after. Grab one of the elastic strips and start feeding it through the opening. A good way to do this is use a long screwdriver or a coat hanger. Keep pushing it through until it reaches the other side. Now that you have the elastic through, you can see that it's pulling the opening closed, and the more elastic you pull out, the tighter the opening will get. So you're going to want to play around with that to find the best fit for you. And what we're going to do is sew the elastic ends together, trim the excess fabric, push the elastic inside the loop, and seal off the opening. And before sealing off the opening, you may want to try the pants on just to make sure they're not too tight, because you can always de-thread the elastic and readjust it. And it's really that simple to make a jogger bottom pants. The last thing we're going to do is speed up the distress process on the raw edges, and the quickest way to do that is to run it through a wash and dry cycle. This is what it looks like after one cycle. I used hot water and also high heat on the drying setting. And the more cycles you do, the more those edges are going to fluff up and look more distressed. Lastly, I added custom branding using leather strips added with double-sided rivets. Using the same technique, I also added zipper pulls. This makes it a lot easier when you're unzipping the bottom sections. But other than that, your pants are ready to go. And again, you don't have to do all these modifications. Using the same sewing techniques, you can also split it up into as many sections as you would like. There's a ton of different things you can do. You can add more pockets, add more zip-off sections. The possibilities are endless, so get creative with it and make a pair of pants that's unique to your style. And there you have it, your new upcycled pants are complete. Hopefully yours turned out as good as mine did. And like I said in the video, you don't have to add all of these upgrades. You can really just add the cargo pockets, make them in layers, turn them into jogger pants, or even just make the capri zip-offs. But like always, I'd love to see what you come up with, so tag me on Instagram at Properfit Clothing. And until then, I'm gonna keep the videos coming at you, so I'll see you next time.